Hi, this is Kelly Caldwell on Those Were the Days. And today I'd like to visit with Francis Bertsch and Orlynn Sieler on our program today. And how are you people this morning?
Real good, thank you.
Well, real good. Well, first of all, perhaps I could start off with Orlynn. And Orlynn, maybe you could tell us a little about your parents and about them coming up into this area and how you got established in Montana.
Like I said, my folks, Larry Burns and my mother, Marjorie Burns, came here, I think, around 1918, 1919, and they homesteaded a place out on the Mill Iron. I'm not exactly sure where it is. And but they neither one were accustomed to farm life, so they came into Baker. My dad went to work as a mechanic for George Huff, and at that time, I don't know what dealership he had, this George. That garage was in what is now the Legion Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked there until, I think, like 1924 or something. Then his brother, Leo Burns, came, and the two of them formed a partnership, Burns Brothers, and got the Chevrolet dealership and started a garage, which later burned down, like in 1936 or something, where the, I guess the Super Value is now, or right in that area. And they continued on there until there was a fire and burned it. And after the war, they built the new garage where, I think, is it C? Did he call himself CNC or?
The Chevy garage.
Chevy
anyway.
garage.
Mm-hmm.
Now of course, the dealership is gone in with the Plymouth, which seemed highly unlikely to me.
Well, that used to be really competitive, wasn't it?
Real competitive.
Your Ford, and then your Chevy, and then your Dodge products. Mm-hmm. Those three were the main ones.
That's right. Yeah, but he had, I don't know, I think about 4 salesmen working at the height of the times, of which my husband Walt was a salesman, and another salesman was Eddie Demigala, and I don't know whether anyone remembers Corbin Ball anymore. So that's how they came. One of my early memories is of the old boardwalk, and I don't think there's a picture in the museum or any place.
Was that the one that went on First Street here?
Yeah.
Down by where the post office is?
It went, I think it went from the corner of what used to be the Midland,
mm-hmm.
and of course that's where Russell's is now, down, I guess, to the community church.
Mm-hmm.
It sure seems like that should have been preserved or something, I don't know.
I remember the boardwalk
and
going underneath it.
Yeah, well, that was a big deal. We went, I went to school then over on the Washington school, and we had our cut across. We'd go under the bridge there and up through the Midland, I guess. The Midland really didn't appreciate that.
But down there where Reynolds is and stuff, that was all just a swamp.
Yeah, that was a swamp. I know my mother was convinced it was quicksand down there, and we weren't supposed to go down there at all, but we did.
I know in the spring of the year, there was times you couldn't go across there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the spillway used to go over way back then.
Well, how far did you have to go when you went up to Washington School then? You lived here in the southwest part of town?
Yes.
And then walked over to Washington School. That was the only grade school then.
Yes, well, see, the Washington School, when I started 3rd grade, building was new. Before that time, I was, went to 1st and 2nd grade up in the old high school, the Longfellow School. See, at one time, I think all those schools, well, no, there was a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd on the other side of town. And that building, it's now a duplex or something, I think. At one time, the Lutheran church was in there, too. And that was the early school. But I never went there. I was on this side of town. And we went, Miss Donovan was my 1st grade teacher, and Cecil Carey my 2nd grade. Then we went over, and we were real thrilled with a new school on the other side of town. And, there was no division then in the grades. We had a big class. We went, 42, and not all the way through school, really. Margaret Scott was the teacher then, 3rd grade. went there until 6th grade. Then we came back up to this school for 7th and 8th under Miss Eisenberg.
What years were you over at the Washington School? What year was that about? When you were like in the 3rd grade over there?
Yeah, 3rd grade. Let's see, I would have been 8, I suppose. It would be like 1928, I would think.
And in the 1930s, then you would have went to the high school here.
Yes, I graduated in 38, and it was, but by that time they had built on the gym, and it was, I think, new maybe that year. Maybe, might have been the first graduating class. Might not have, I'm not sure.
When they built the gymnasium onto the high school?
Yes. I'm not sure the exact year. It was pretty new when we were in school.
That had a balcony up on the top, didn't it? Ran across the one side.
Yes,
there?
Along the wall. Then there was 2 classrooms. I think just 2 overlooking the gymnasium. And we thought that was wonderful. We had that gym. Before that they played basketball in the Legion Hall. And the proms and everything were down there. But after they built that, then it was in the old school. That was kind of traumatic when it burned.
Yeah, that was in 67 or something?
Something like that.
And where did you meet Walter then? Your husband, was that through the garage?
Well, no. Sounds real romantic, doesn't it? I went, they used to have these roller skating people that come home and come around, and they'd put on about 4 weeks. They'd have roller skating. That was in the Legion Hall. So I went down one time and was scared to death. So he asked if he could help me around the rink. And so that's where it all started.
Helping you roller skate?
Yeah.
How was you at roller skating? Pretty good?
I guess we got along all right anyway, because I had always roller skated on sidewalk, but it's a little bit different in the hall, or I was afraid to try to start with.
They had the music going, and well, they used to roller skate out at Green Acres too, didn't they?
Yes.
Kind of an outdoor.
And that old, well, it was the Wildwood. Do you remember the Wildwood Hall, or do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you do, because I can remember having a birthday party for my daughter and my niece out at the old Wildwood Hall, and they roller skated. Remember the tree growing up through the middle of the hall? That was another sad thing, wasn't it? To lose the old Wildwood Hall.
And Orlynn, where did Walter originally come from, and his parents?
See, they moved over in, I think, 36. And they were farming then out on the, at that time we called it the Paul Hubbard place at Cinzetti Harris. It is. And he came from Mound City, I think, Mound City, South Dakota. And they farmed.
They came up here in 1936. That would have been a pretty tough year to come into this area and go into farming.
Yeah, maybe it was earlier. Maybe I really don't know when it was they came. That might have been earlier. It seemed like it must have been.
Then how about your children now? Your family?
Oh, I have the 3, or we had 3 daughters. Linda, who lives in Kalispell, married to Calvin Newell, and Carol, married to a Danny Aldridge, and she lives in Merkel, Texas. And then I'm real glad I have one north of Plevna, married to Roger Hooks. Linda and Calvin don't have any children. Carol has.
They have a pit bull or something, though, don't they?
They have a Doberman.
Doberman.
They lost their Doberman.
Oh, they did?
Misty died in May, I think it was. Oh, that was really traumatic,
Yeah, I can imagine. Linda, just everywhere she went, the dog went.
The dog went. The dog wasn't welcome, and quite a few people don't like Dobermans.
Yeah.
In fact, I wasn't sure I was going to go visit them, but Misty was a real nice dog. And, it wasn't scary at all when she got to realize it.
I know that was the way I was the first time I ran across the dog. I kind of backed off a little bit and then found out it was just a good old friendly dog.
They have a new Doberman puppy now. So.
Oh.
but they didn't think they would at first. There was no use in putting yourself through something like that again.
Kind of like losing one of the
Family,
family.
really. But you don't get the sympathy and everything. Oh, just a dog.
Well, so you do still though have one of the kids, so to speak,
Nearby.
that still live in the general area.
And the granddaughters to enjoy, so I'm real happy. My grandsons down in Texas don't do me a lot of good, but
No.
I think a lot of them too, of course.
And they get up to visit once in a while, I imagine.
Oh, sure, I get down there once a year and they get up here once a year, so that helps them. The telephone is a wonderful invention. I was a telephone operator too once.
Oh, here in Baker?
Yeah.
Was that down at the old, well, it's still the telephone
sure.
company, isn't it?
Yeah, but of course there was an old building then.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't the one that's there now, but it was on the same location. And I worked there right out of high school, and I saved $100 and went away to school.
Well, working there then, that's when the operator did everything, right?
Yes,
And
I did work after I was married too.
for the telephone company?
Yeah, I had 14 years in when that went dial.
I imagine that was quite a difference when they went dial. That was really quite an invention then, or innovation.
Yeah, it was. It was, in a way, it was one of those payrolls that Baker lost. And it was a nice place for young ladies to work. And I would have liked to have transferred with him in a way, but couldn't really tear up my family and tear Walt away from his work and whatnot.
I know my sister-in-law, Karen, was an operator, and you could pick up the phone and say, I want to talk to my grandma.
Yeah.
And it went right through. I don't think I could do that today.
No. We had little kids be home alone or something and call up, could you tell me a story? We'd have that happen.
Oh, is that right? Would you do it?
Sometimes, depending on if you had time, you'd try and tell them something because you'd feel sorry for them.
Just call up and visit with the operator.
Yeah.
That'd be quite a deal. Then everything went computer or something.
Yes, that I can remember when they cut the cable. It felt like it was my lifeblood or something. It was an emotional thing to happen. That was.
And then Francis, you came up to this country when then?
Well, my dad came over from Norway. And this was in the year, he was born in 1887. In 1908, he came over to Minneapolis, Minnesota. He decided to leave Norway at the age of 18. In 1909, he came to Baker, and his brother John and him homesteaded right south of Baker, about 2 miles. My dad worked for the railroad, Milwaukee Railroad, as a section hand for $1.50, put in 10 hours a day for an hour and a half a day. And all they had was a pick and shovel at that time to work with. Dad helped build the first church at Baker, which was a congregational church. In 1912, he married Martha Gustafson, who was sister to Albert Gustafson. They had one son, my half-brother, Gilbert. And Gilbert went to school here in Baker. And then when he was married to Wilma Klein, they went and lived on the Kinsey Project. From there, they went down to Lemon, South Dakota, which they lived since. Gilbert was 5 years old when his mother passed away, and my dad married my mom, May Gunderson, or May L. Everson. She was born in 1898 in Harrisburg, South Dakota. Her folks came over here in 1910, and they homesteaded down at Willard. At the age of 12 years old, that's when they were homesteading, when my mom was 12 years old. And it was really something, you know, when we'd go as kids to the grandparents, because that was a special occasion on Thanksgiving Day. My grandparents moved then from down by Willard over southwest of Baker.
Mm-hmm.
And
that was just right directly out of town, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
right on
was.
the edge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's about 5 miles out.
Oh, it is that far?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it was really something to go. But the only way we could go in the wintertime for Thanksgiving dinners was to be with the horse and wagon or sled at that time, you know. But it was really great, you know. And my mom became a Watkins dealer in 1953. And she really loved that work.
1953?
1953.
They had their Watkins route?
Yes.
Well, they, back in the earlier days, didn't she deliver milk also and things of this nature?
They sure did. And they went into the dairy business in 1919.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite an experience because when us kids got old enough, they were milking like 30 cows by hand. And it was really something. We had all of all of the bottles, we had to wash those by hand. We had later on we had a little machine, you know, that we stuck them on with a brush on.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had to bottle it all by hand. They had a big cooler that was made out of tin, you know. And then there was ice in there, which the folks had put up the ice in an old ice house. Mm-hmm. They would cut the ice from the Baker Lake into big cubes, you know, and haul it home, pack it in sawdust, and then they would take this ice and put it in this big container. Then we would pour the milk through strainers over top of this and pull the milk down real cold, and then we would bottle it. Then we would have little caps that the folks would purchase. They were little, the bottles were of glass, and then these paper, they were little, like wax paper things that we would press on the bottle. And we would have to get up and deliver the milk before school in the morning. That was our daily job. I mean, you know, at going.
When you had fresh milk on the breakfast table, it was fresh milk.
Yeah, we did. And so it was really something in the hard winters. And I mean, we would deliver it with, you know, with the car. The folks would go around with the car, but in the wintertime it was nothing but the sleds and horses, you know, that we would go to. It was really, you know, interesting.
You meet a lot of people that way.
That's right. The milk sold for 5 cents a quart at that time. Then they raised the price to 8 cents, and then to 10 cents a quart. And now we're paying 70-some cents a quart. But they were in that business for 34 years.
I can't remember who it was. It was either George or Ida were telling me when you guys made your milk route, it was quite a treat when you went to pick up the empty bottles. Somebody once in a while would leave a couple pennies in a bottle for you.
Yes, that's right. And then when we got all done for the day, George Granger, we would deliver milk to George Granger's cafe, and we, as a treat, we would get to have an ice cream cone. That didn't happen every day, though, just once in a while. And that was really a treat. And then from the dairy business, then the folks, Mom went into the dealership of Watkins Products. And so she would go on these routes, and then she would take Orlynn's mom with, and it seemed like if they were in Weebo, they'd have their Dairy Queen Sunday before they would start home, whether it was Miles City or, you know, but they really had a lot in common.
Well, the Watkins dealership, now that was pretty much out in the country, wasn't it? The rural? Yes.
Percy Bryson had it in the beginning. They bought it from Percy Bryson. And that was something, you know, it was the vanillas, fly sprays, all that, you know, things.
A little bit of everything, wasn't it?
They had
nectar. I just remember.
Yeah,
They always
nectar.
had Kool-Aid
I know,
now, but it's
like
nectar.
which is called Kool-Aid these days, but
That was
it
nectar?
was a concentrate. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And liquid.
And that was really good. Then from that, Mom went into the resale store. When they moved into Baker, they sold their farm to the old Timber Creek land that they had. They sold that to Munsell.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Mark Bronson bought the Folks' place. But in before, when we lived on the farm, the folks built the barn, which feel really bad about now because it's not there. But it was one of the highlights of the whole area, because in that time we always look forward to Saturday night, because your grandpa and uncles were the ones who provided all the music on their violins.
Uh-huh.
And it was just a fun time. I mean, we had what would they call it now? You know, where they take like a ramp, only it was stairs that that they would crawl up into the hayloft. And man, if the dance would last up 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, and then they had the old tin cups, that they had the coffee, and they had lunch up there, and it was just a fun thing, all the neighbors would gather and have this fun evening.
Mm-hmm. And it went all night, huh?
It went all night, yeah, like 4 o'clock in the morning.
And then have a potluck or something afterwards?
It was fun. There was always lunch during during the time. It was fun.
What happened to the barn? Did it just went away with old age, huh?
Well, when Mark was there, he put a lean-to onto the north side of the building, and a couple 3 days ago, we were out to see the place. Esther and Ida and I were out, and Dee Dee Kennitzer showed us the farm, which I was really grateful for, because I've always wondered how they, remodeled it on the inside. And then she told me that she could see where on the side that the pigs had just rooted up against it. They had, and just kind of tore it apart, and the barn blew down. But that was one of the nicest buildings of all, because we had concrete floor in there, and we'd have the cows all lined up, and that place was scrubbed every day. We had to hose it down, and the walls and everything. It was all inspected, and we had to have it really clean. And those cows, I mean, it was unbelievable. They come in on those clean concrete, scrubbed down, and really, really clean. And that's what was so hard to see now, is because it's just standing there, But the concrete and stuff is still there, but,
But the barn is gone.
Yeah, the barn is gone. It's kind of big.
Well, now, did Gunder, where did you meet up with Gunder?
Gunder was my dad.
He was your dad, okay.
Yeah.
And then Ida and George and them, you would be...
They are my cousins.
They're your cousins?
Yes.
Okay.
Their dad and my dad came over from Norway.
And then, who's your husband then?
Ted Bertsch.
Ted.
Mm-hmm.
And where did Ted come from?
Well, he came from Eureka, South Dakota.
Oh, uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what year that his folks came over here. But he worked for Bill Olson on the railroad.
Mm-hmm.
And that was right at, when we were married.
Well, where'd you meet Ted at?
Well, at our church.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had socials in our church, and all the young people would come, and we'd have these socials. And
was that the Congregational Church?
No, the Baptist Church.
Baptist Church.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Baptist church has always been pretty much in that same location, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Where it is
Just,
today?
Yes, only they just, turned the building around or whatever, made it bigger. And Ted was in the service. He was down at Fort Leonard Wood. And then from there he was shipped to Alaska. He was up there for 3 years. From there, when he went over to Virginia, then I was able to go over there with him.
Well, during the war he was in Alaska then?
Yes.
Well, he had
was
pretty
on the
good
railroad.
pretty good duty then.
Mm-hmm. He worked on the railroad up there.
What year were you and Ted married?
In 41.
41,
Yes.
just going into the war then.
Yes. Mm-hmm. He was one of the first drafting inducted into the service. And we worked for George Granger Cafe while he was in the service. Then when he was able to be, moved so that I could go over when we were in all of the eastern cities, places.
What year did you come back to Baker then?
In 45.
45? Yeah, what did Ted do then?
Well, that's when, then he worked for the railroad some more.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I tell you, it's been interesting.
That was
And
the
we
old
had-
Milwaukee Railroad then.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what did he do for them?
Well, he put in ties.
Worked on the
Yeah,
kind
on
of, what do they call
section.
those, section crews?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, section crews.
Mm-hmm. He worked for. Then they had during the summertime they would take and go from one section to another. So there would be a time when my oldest daughter was just real small, and we had to live in a boxcar on the railroad, and he would go from one town to another. And one time a train came by as we were set on the siding, and they threw the switch in the wrong way. Anyway, we landed up being banged into. The daughter landed up on the floor in the little old boxcar. And it was interesting, that way.
Well, how were these boxcars set up? Kind of like a
They were-
trailer house in there, or?
Kind of like
we
these
had just
ones.
one little
That were-
room. We had a little cot and a little table and things, and we just, we had a little ice box in which we'd get some ice from the railroad place there, just to keep, the milk and things for the baby, and that was the way we spent our summers. It was taking these weeds, cutting down they had a regular weed mower that they used, and they were cutting down the weeds along the railroad tracks. And through the whole line, from down to as far as Isabel, South Dakota, we'd go. And then we'd go on the North Branch, too. So.
Right around on the railroad.
Yeah. Starting out from Bowman, and Ted worked down in Bowman with Roberta Ingesser's dad, and so that's where he got started with that. That was quite an experience too. Lots to think about.
That would have been in the late 40s then, right in that area?
Yes.
I knew that.
Good. Yeah, it was fun. Then we came back, and we moved out on Ted's folks' farm. And so the girls, 2 girls, we have 4 daughters. And Bonnie went to school out there at Vidian. Mrs. Corey was her teacher out there.
Oh, she's a great teacher.
She was really, really great, yes. But I have the 2 daughters that are married to the Allerdings boys, Bonnie and Betty.
Well, they kept it all in the family then.
Yes, they did. Yes, and then Ray and Milbert. Bonnie is married to Ray Allerdings, and Betty is married to Milbert. And Bonnie and Ray have 2 boys, and Betty and Milbert have 3 girls. Beverly, our 3rd daughter, is married to Jerry Shell, and they have 2 daughters. And our youngest daughter is Petty, and she's married to Stan Brannon. They have 3 children.
Well, Orlynn and Francis, you both then have real close connections with the Plevna community.
Yeah, we surely do. That was a big surprise. I never would have predicted that years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, you two have known each other for virtually all your life.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And you went to school together?
I'm 2 years older than she is, so I was a little ahead at that time. But, yeah, we've known each other always. Like I said, I never knew you traveled in the boxcar for a while, but
yeah.
That would have been interesting.
How long did you do that, Francis, altogether?
Well, we did it every summer.
Every summer?
Yeah, for maybe like 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm. And the train would just come to you when you wanted to move, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That'd be quite an experience.
It
sounded like a little fun.
It was at those
Gypsies
days, you know, and Ted would just be gone out, you know, in the morning. He'd get on this weed mower and take off down the railroad track. Well, then I was to meet him. He would tell me where I was to go, and then I would just drive that many miles with the car and meet him down the road. I probably had never seen the people before, the section foreman and his wife or anybody. But it was fun. The only experience was when that old train hit us. And that was
that would wake you up from your nap, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, they had that crew in the summer that, you know, there was those boxcars along the tracks. I was curious. I was wondering what they do if I go and try and look it over, but didn't have.
Yeah.
How did you occupy your time there? I imagine you had a lot of time on your hands, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. But then Bonnie was real small then, you know, and so she took up, you know, made life interesting for us, you know. She was a real good babe. But then it was just the idea that, you know, nowadays they are so careful, you know, and they have to have distilled water and all these things. But we didn't know what that was in those days, you know. We just took things as they were. We boiled the water, you know, we had little pans, and we had a little tiny stove. Most of the time it was just a little gas plate, you know, that we would have. And so you couldn't cook really, and there was no ovens, you know, so we just, you know, it was different, but it was a nice way to have the summer spent, you know.
I don't imagine the bathing facilities were too awfully good either,
well,
were they?
Not really.
No.
In those days we had a big old wash tub, you know, and that, because like the section places, it was just like our depot here at that time, you know. I mean, there was just nothing there, and they had big water tanks and things that we would get our water, and pails. We had the little old dipper that we used. It warmed our water for everything. That was fun.
No air conditioning either.
No air conditioning.
Probably got a little warm some of those days and nights.
Yeah, lots of times we'd put up a blanket on the window, you know, especially when I was driving, to protect the baby from the heat, because there was no heat and no air conditioning or anything in the cars, you know. So, and then you'd take them and lay them out on the ground, you know, on a blanket on the ground. When Ted worked in Beach on the railroad, on the road construction, and he drove the big packers when they were building. And we had a little camper thing that we lived in then, and that's what we did then. We'd kind of lay her down on the ground underneath the shade of the camper, you know, for the afternoon when it was really hot. That was really exciting too, you know. We'd stay in Beach then, you know. The trailers were parked there in Beach, and then they'd work out on the highways, and then they'd come in. We had a few fun moments. Look back on.
Right. Well, Orlynn, are you still living in the same house here in Baker, at the same location that you always were?
I mean,
I remember it seemed like an awful big house that you had over there on the west side of town.
I'm trying to think when it was. Carol was about a year and a half or something when we moved that's the old Willard store that we moved in and remodeled, and I'm still living there. We had lived in other places, before we started on our own. My folks' place is where Curry's live now.
Mm-hmm.
We lived, I think Brujas lived where we lived for a long time. The house belonged to Charlie Boss before we got our own house.
When you brought the old Willard store in, was that easier to bring that in and do some work on it than to build another house?
Well, lumber, there wasn't anything available. During the war, there was a lot of people that moved houses in because it was awfully, it was quite a while before we found a bathtub even to buy. And I guess it was 46 or 47 that we moved that in. It's before my dad died, anyway. But it was worked out good. I guess it'll last me.
And that house is still here then?
They mean where I'm living, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's still the same place, still a block down from where you lived. I remember. You kids over down the block there. Of course, there wasn't, when you lived there, Don and Earl's house wasn't there either, I don't think. Weren't you about the only house?
She was. I was so young.
Yuck.
I was like 5 years old or 6 years old. We lived there about 2 years, and then my grandmother moved back up there. That was really her house.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the old boardwalk. Wasn't that you, Orlynn? Mentioned the boardwalk there? You say there's nothing on record in the museum on that?
I've not seen any pictures. I was over there just, 2-3 weeks ago with a group, and I kept looking. It seemed to me like that was an historical thing, and surely somebody must have had a picture of it someplace. But I haven't seen one. Have you? Or
no, there must be one around somewhere.
I would think that somebody. Of course, it wasn't particularly beautiful, and I suppose it was a place where you went to get your picture taken or anything.
Yeah.
But it is kind of too bad because it was there for a long time, and I don't even know when they tore it down. Of course, there's been a lot of fill-in work and everything.
I wonder if they tore that down about the time they paved the streets. That was in about 59 or 60 or 59, right in there. That could have been about...
Could have been. It seems like maybe it was earlier than that, but I don't know. I sure don't remember when it disappeared. It's funny that I thought that... I have to ask Red Curl or somebody, I guess.
Maybe
sometime.
Red would know.
He might know.
Because he would have been mayor right in through there.
Yeah, no, he was the one that got the streets going.
Well, Frances and Orlynn, is there anything else you can add while we have this opportunity together?
I don't think of anything in particular, I guess. Been a good place to live, I guess. Hate to see it get kind of losing everybody now. But losing our businesses and everything. It's sad to see Main Street the way it is, I think.
I know Main Street, that's always been kind of a lot of activity down there through the years.
I remember, when they used to park down the middle of Main Street, and it was, then Wednesdays and Saturdays were always a big day. Now Saturday's real dead. That seems strange to me too.
Everybody come to town on Saturday to stock up for the week?
Yeah, and meet everybody, and it was kind of social.
Well, Orlynn and Frances, Orlynn Sieler and Frances Bertsch, and perhaps we can get together again and add on to our program. And we certainly want to thank you very much for joining us on Those Were the Days. Thank you.
It's very interesting.
Thanks to you.
You get to see.